Okay, folks, so let's go ahead and get started here. There may be other people joining as we go. Um, Welcome this evening to the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study Public Shared Vision Meeting. We're going to tell you all about the shared vision. We're going to tell you all about the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. My name is Mike Padilla. I'm a project manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Chicago. And I welcome you here tonight. And on behalf of the team, thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to telling you more about the study and the shared vision, especially. And we'll be introducing members of the team as we go along. I wanted to mention that this meeting is being recorded and it will be available on the study website, which we have a website, www.lrd.usace.army.mil/GLCRS. That's www.lrd, which is Lakes and Rivers Division, .usace, USACE, .army.mil, MIL/GLCRS, Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. This is the first of many outreach and partnering opportunities that will occur over the next few years for the general public as the study takes shape and moves towards a collaborative conclusion. This is all about resiliency for the Great Lakes, enhancing resiliency along our Great Lakes coast. It's a shared responsibility, and that requires that we all work together to respond to future changing conditions. And that's what the shared vision is all about, is coming up with a shared responsibility, a vision for what we'd like to see after we've completed this study, our vision for the results of our meeting, and how we can make the Great Lakes more resilient. We will be responding to questions, but at a designated question and answer time. And so I would like to introduce you to Dr. Akila Martin, who will tell you a little bit about the Zoom features and how you can enter a question into the Q&A feature. Akila.
Thank you so much, Mike. Welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Akila Martin, daughter to Laurel and James Martin, and I am serving today as the facilitator for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study Shared Vision public meetings. And you may find my co-facilitator, Madeline Dewey, who represents the Buffalo District. I'm at the Chicago District of the Army Corps of Engineers, right in the chat. So please make sure you check out the chat as often as you can. There will be lots of great nuggets of information and links that we're sharing with you. Now I'd like to turn your attention to the Zoom platform. If you turn your gaze downward to the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a few toggles that you can click on. The first one we want to call your attention to is the Q&A feature. We encourage you, we invite you to please use the Q&A function to send us a question. Please do not put your question in the chat. We like for you to put the question in the Q&A so as it won't get lost in the chat feature. You can send us an anonymous question. You can send a question privately. We're also offering that if you want to send myself, Akila, and or Madeline a direct message, you can send us a question there or comment there if you want to remain private. If you look to the right of the Q&A functionality, you will see the chat feature. The chat feature says chat and has a call out button on top. You can click that. You will find Madeline Dewey already pasting welcome messages, links, and things of that nature. You can introduce yourself if you like. You can provide any feedback, any input, or any comments in the chat. Finally, if you would like to see a transcript of what's being stated verbally during this meeting today, there's a toggle right to the right of the chat feature called Show Captions. It is labeled with a CC in a box. You can click on that and you can view the full transcript of what's being said today. I also like to take this time to say thank you to Argonne National Laboratory for providing this Zoom platform for us today and for all of our Shared Vision public meetings. Thank you so much, Argonne. I'll hold for a minute just in case people have comments or questions. All right. Over to you, Mike, to go over the agenda.
Thanks, Akila. So again, welcome tonight. We're going to be going through this agenda here real quickly so you know what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to do an icebreaker exercise here that has to do with the Great Lakes that should be interesting to you. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study the study background and scope, the shared vision statement, which is really the main reason we're here today, to talk about a shared vision for the study and for the Great Lakes resiliency. We're going to talk about major study products. We're going to talk about a basin-wide analysis, which is what we're going to do to try to get at the vulnerabilities of the Great Lakes coast and how we can look at those vulnerabilities to make them more resilient. And then we're going to have some time for some questions and answers, and then we'll tell you a little bit about the next steps for the study. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it back over to Akila, who's going to talk a little bit about the meeting touchstones and shared expectations. Akila.
Yes, thank you so much. Hey everyone, I'm back. We'd like to go over some meeting touchstones and some shared expectations of how we'd like to spend our time together this evening. And so I'll go over those one by one. So first of all, we'd like for you to be 100% present, prepared, and extending and presuming welcome. We welcome you, we encourage you, we welcome any questions, we welcome any feedback or input. To limit distractions, which you can hear the siren because I'm on a, a busy street, so I pardon for that noise. Please mute or turn off your cell phones. We love for you to be aware of and allow for the difference between intention and impact. Please listen deeply, always by invitation. As we said, we are encouraging you to provide feedback, comments, questions, all of that. We are at the ready to respond to those. If you perhaps have any assumptions and identify those, please try to suspend judgment. If you have an opportunity to speak aloud, please keep your speaking time to 1.5 minutes or less so as to allow others to have a chance to have their question answered and or their chatted comment answered. At any time, please speak your truth. And if things get difficult, turn to wonder, knowing that you are making a significant contribution. And we want to emphasize to expect non-closure. We may not be able to answer all your questions or acknowledge all your comments because we may not have those answers right now in the study. But know that the team is working diligently to get to those answers. And finally, keep the meeting moving forward and focused on the meeting purpose. We thank you for allowing us this space to share with you about our meeting touchstones. Now, I want to emphasize yet again about the questions and answers versus the chatted comments. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to ask us a question. As I said, you can do it anonymously by sending it private. You can also send myself, Akila, and or Madeline Dewey a direct message that'll be private to us, and we can state that question aloud without stating your name. If you have any input or feedback or comments, please use the chat feature. All right. Thank you so much, you all, and welcome again. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Akila. The Corps of Engineers, we have a civil works mission and across the nation, really, that has to do with water resources of every kind. We have lots and lots of facilities. And on the Great Lakes, same thing. We have a water resource mission and we have lots of facilities. And so we've thought about resiliency. And to us, resilience means the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and adapt to changing conditions, and to withstand, respond to, and recover rapidly from disruptions. And we kind of look at this as a cycle. It makes sense to look at resilience principles as a cycle to prepare, absorb, recover, and adapt. So when you're talking about some sort of a disruption or some sort of an event that causes problems, then what you can do is these principles. You can prepare. You can put together things so that you're ready before, during, and immediately after a disruption. This is about planning, training, putting protections in place. Preparing for an event. Absorb. When an event occurs or a disruption occurs, endure that disruption with minimal damage without losing normal functionality. Try to absorb it. Recover after the event or the disruption. Quickly return to functionality. That may involve rebuilding in ways that allow for less damage from similar events in the future. But recover as fast as you can. Adapt, and that's key. Is that once you've gone through these things, then you adapt for the next time. You make changes that will reduce negative impacts in the future. And this is a cycle, and hopefully for continual improvement, that you do this cycle of prepare, absorb, recover, and adapt. So that's how the core kind of looks at it, and we use this in training and that sort of thing. Now, we'd actually like to hear what coastal resiliency means to you. And to do so, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Akila Martin. She's going to take it from there, and we're going to do an exercise on coastal resilience and what it means to you. Akila.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for that wonderful definition that USACE uses to define the meaning of coastal resiliency. And so, as Mike said, we want to hear from you. And so, we set up a poll on a platform called Poll Everywhere. And so we have a few different ways for you to join. So you will navigate away from the Zoom platform to the Poll Everywhere platform site. And so I'll go over the first one. If you have a mobile phone and a working camera, you can screen capture or scan that QR code that's in the square that's being highlighted right now with the red circle. And that should take you right to the Poll Everywhere site to be able to input your response. You can also text using your mobile phone, and I'll state the number a few times. The number is 22333. The number is 22333. And so that's the number you're going to text. And then what you're going to put in the message part of that is the word choice. And then the next word is guru 975. So you should type choice guru 975. I'll spell it out. CHOICEGURU. So that's choice guru and the numbers 975. So you can scan it, the QR code. You can text to 22333. And then finally, Madeline has placed the link to the Poll Everywhere site in the chat, so you can directly click there. And I'll also read it aloud for those who may not be able to see that in the chat. So the website is as follows. It's POLL for poll. So POLL, EV, and that's for everywhere, but they shorten it to EV. So poll EV, POLLEV.com. So that's pollev.com, and then / choice guru 975. I'll read it one more time. pollev.com, POLLEV.com / choice guru 975. All right. I will share my screen now so you all have an opportunity to see the word cloud come alive. Let's see. Let me know if you all can see. Oh, wait. All right. Yep. Okay, let me know if you all can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. All right, you all. So it is activated, and what we've did today, we've made it so it'll show as a word cloud. And if you don't know what a word cloud is, a word cloud is basically whatever words that the participants input. So you may input words, phrases, statements, sentences, whatever you'd like into this. So please go ahead at your earliest convenience. Please type in whatever you want. Of course, as appropriate to the question, what does coastal resiliency mean to you? You can participate multiple times. And what will happen is the more frequent a word shows up as input from the participants, it will get larger on the screen. And so the larger words just indicate that that response was frequently used.
Hey,
So
Keela.
Yes.
I don't think it's activated on your end.
Oh, goodness.
Would you mind refreshing? There we go.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. All right. Thanks for that, Madeline. All right. So sorry about that, y'all. Thought it was activated, but it wasn't. So there we are. Thank you. So we see health, Dune, and prepare, proactive. So the more responses we get, the more the words start to spread out. And as I said, the more frequent you see a word come up, the bigger it will get. So as you see health, health must be a frequent term that's being used. So as you see, it's bigger than the other words that are on the screen. All right. So please feel free to come back here throughout the duration of this meeting. I'll have it activated for the next hour, hour and a half or so. You can respond multiple times and feel free to do that. And I want to say thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for responding. Thank you for participating and telling us, what does coastal resiliency mean to you? Thank you so much. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Akila. So, we thought a little bit about this resiliency, and in participation and cooperation with our states partners. I'll tell you a little bit about our partnership in a few minutes with the Great Lakes states. But we thought about this, and we talked about the who, what, where, when, and why, and how of resiliency. And here's some of the things that we came up with. So when it's who, it's really the people that live by the lake, the communities, and the people that may not live by the lake, but go to the lakes. There's lots of tourism and that sort of thing. It's also the habitats, the creatures, the infrastructure, all those kind of things is what are the objects that we're dealing with here. What are we worried about when it comes to resiliency? Well, it has to do with the variable water levels, constantly changing. You have changing ice conditions, and we're really looking at a range of possible climate change scenarios. In other words, what do we have to be resilient against? Well, there's a range. It's not a simple thing. It's a range of possibilities that are uncertain, and more uncertain now with climate change. When do we want to do this? Both short and long term. In the short term, we want to make sure we understand what's coming our way. But long term, looking quite a ways ahead, especially when it comes to building things and investing in things. We want to make sure that we have some sort of insight to what's happening in the long term when it comes to the Great Lakes coast. The where, very, very simple, right? The Great Lakes coast and the United States Great Lakes coast. And when I say the United States, I mean that the Great Lakes also include Canada. They border on the Great Lakes, obviously. And I just wanted to mention that this study isn't really going to study the Canadian side very much. However, in the models and things that we do, I mentioned in the what part of this that the range of possible climate change scenarios. Well, we're doing modeling that has to do with that, looking forward and modeling what those range of scenarios could be. And we're sharing that information and collaborating and coordinating with Canada on that. So again, we won't be doing a lot of assessments or analysis on that. Well, we won't do any on the Canadian side. We will share, the information that we have that was coming from models and other parts of the study. And why? That's the really important thing. Why do we need to be resilient? It's because of all the different resources out there. You're talking about the economic, the environmental, and social value of the Great Lakes coast. And we do need we have a star there because we do need your help on that so that we can understand, exactly what is that we're trying to, why are we doing this? What needs to be resilient? And then the how part of it, I talked a little bit about promoting a shared responsibility, and that's what we'll talk about a little bit on the shared vision. But when people have a shared responsibility to be proactive and to be resilient in the future, that's a good thing. We want to share that responsibility. And how can we do that? We can identify a range of actions that can be done to help with resiliency and to guide with further regional investment. And so these things will be updated based on feedback that we collect today on the shared vision. And again, these are some thought we put into it, and we hope that you understand and can help us make this better. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the study background and a little bit so you can understand. So this study, the Great Lakes Coastal Resilience Study, is collaboration between the Great Lakes states. You can see them there. You can see the Great Lakes in the map, the color-coded map. You can see the Great Lakes states are Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. And all of these states are partners with us in this study. And I'll tell you more about that partnership. But it's also comprised of three Corps of Engineers districts: Chicago, Detroit, and Buffalo. And those are color coded as well. And the Corps of Engineers' key missions, really for water resources across the nation, but definitely for the Great Lakes, are navigation, flood risk management, aquatic ecosystem restoration, emergency response, and then you may also know that we have a mission for regulatory. And so because this is our key missions, when you think about it, all of these things could need to be resilient. We need to consider resiliency in the face of these missions that we have. Next slide, please. A little bit more about the background. So the overall objective of the study is, to be proactive, and so that we can be more resilient, which protects the long-term economic, environmental, and social value of the Great Lakes coast. All about being proactive. Again, when you think about climate change and the things that could occur, we want to be proactive and look forward and try to be ready. The cost of the study is $14.4 million estimated. It's cost shared. I mentioned the 8 Great Lakes states, they are our partners. So it's the Corps of Engineers and the 8 Great Lakes states that are partners on this study. 75% federal paid for, and 25% state contribution. It's a 5-year study that started in July of 2023, and it will end in October 2028, according to the current schedule. So a 5-year study. So it's really quite an endeavor. 5 years and $14.4 million that will be using to study resiliency on the Great Lakes. Next slide, please. So the scope of this study, what we're going to do to conduct this study, a big part of it is a vulnerability assessment. We want to identify coastal areas that are already or likely to become vulnerable to future flooding, erosion, and accretion. We want to identify actions, resilient actions, to address those vulnerabilities and to improve resilience and adaptability of the coastal resources. And when I say coastal resources, lots and lots of types of resources that we'll talk a little bit more about. We want to come up with a coastal resiliency plan, ultimately a plan that would identify strategic recommendations that will help us to be resilient and will help to prioritize future investments for the future. Next slide, please. This is a collaborative approach, as I mentioned, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with the 3 Great Lakes districts, also the 8 Great Lakes states, tribal nations. We've been reaching out to tribal nations and have met with them several times since the study began in July of 2023, and had several meetings with them. We hope to get their collaboration and cooperation and input into the study. We've also collaborated and coordinated with many federal agencies, besides the Corps of Engineers, state and local agencies. And you can imagine with eight Great Lakes states and all the state agencies that they have, that we coordinate with them as well, and also the local agencies. So that's quite a few entities that we're engaged with. We hope to get a really comprehensive contribution, cooperation, and collaboration for this study. And finally, it's the public, those that live, work, and recreate on the Great Lakes, and that's a lot of people. And we hope also to have them engaged and involved with the study. And today is part of that, reaching out to the public to tell them about the study. And so we'll have lots of opportunities for more public participation in the study, and we'll tell you more about that as we go. Next slide, please. Here's some of the questions that people ask when they think about climate change and how it affects the Great Lakes coast. Beaches getting flooded out. I know in Chicago, there's actually a few beaches that got just wiped out during the high lake levels of 2020, completely wiped out. Tourism, high lake levels, low lake levels can really affect tourism. How would that affect my town when it comes to tourism? Fish habitat. People are worried about habitat. that could be destroyed by climate change and things like that. Flooding. Everybody's concerned about flooding, especially with the high lake levels from a few years ago. And also, you have low lake levels sometimes. Will my boat bottom out? Can I get where I need to go from a recreational standpoint? From commerce, from in an industry, is there going to be increased shipping costs when the lake levels are low? Sometimes boats can't get through where they need to go, and so they need to light load and carry less cargo than they have capacity for, and that basically is not efficient and ends up with higher shipping costs. And there's other effects. So people are already concerned about climate change, and kind of that's why we're here to try to be proactive about these concerns. Next slide, please. So this is the study that we're doing for the Great Lakes Coastal Resilience is actually considered a watershed study and is actually from Section 729 from the Water Resources Development Act that Congress put into law. And basically, it's a watershed assessment. So what we do in a watershed is to develop and document a shared watershed vision. And again, we'll talk more about that. That's the main reason we're here today, is a vision for our watershed, the Great Lakes, and to make recommendations for actions that can be taken to address problems that you identify, and to come up with a strategic roadmap to implement those recommendations. And so you can see this graphic as kind of a timeline. And we started with a cost share agreement when our 8 Great Lakes partners and the Corps of Engineers signed a cost share agreement. That was in September of 2022. And we spent almost a year, not quite, developing a project management plan. And the project management plan is a roadmap for how the study will be conducted. It consists of 3 basic things, which are the scope. What exactly are we trying to do with this study? Schedule, all of the activities that we identified in the scope. When are they going to occur? What's the schedule for them? Very detailed, and also a budget. So again, all of those activities that were identified in the scope and the schedule, how much will they cost? And so we developed that PMP. It is available, and by request we can send it to anybody that requests it. And again, it has lots and lots of detail and is a roadmap for the conductance of the study. As we go through the timeline, the first milestone is the shared vision milestone. And again, that's kind of why we're here today. We'll talk more about that. And the shared vision milestone is going to be, we hope to achieve that in June of this year. We're kind of getting the input from you all, and we will, deliberate on that and share that shared vision. And that milestone is in June of this year. Once we start to move forward, we talked about doing a basin-wide, or doing an analysis and assessment of the watershed. When we do that for several years, then we'll come up with the recommendations. And there's a milestone called the recommendations milestone, where having developed recommendations, we will share that with you all, with the public, with agencies, with our partners and other stakeholders, and let you see those recommendations, and also to comment and then kind of revise them to make sure we got it right. And that's the second milestone for the watershed study. And the third milestone is a final report. And so we will actually have a report that we hope will be very useful for stakeholders, the states, the agencies, the public to to consult when you're looking at vulnerabilities and how we can be more resilient. And not only will we have a final report, but we'll also have some other tools that we'll tell you about that will also be useful to you all. And we'll tell you more about that as we go. I want to mention down at the bottom, the Corps of Engineers Great Lakes and Ohio River Division is the decision-making authority. In other words, we have to basically submit our work to them, and they're our leadership, and they will then approve it, and we can go on to the next milestone, and then we can eventually complete the report and finish the study. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, next
Sorry,
slide, please.
Our office just got disconnected for a second.
Oh. Okay, so a little bit about engagement. Another timeline here shown. And when it comes to public coordination and update, that's shown at the bottom in the blue, and it's also shown on the timeline in blue color code. We also show tribal nation engagement, so you can see that we're doing that on a regular basis, and then also federal agency coordination meetings. But for the public, you can see that we're actually conducting 9 shared vision meetings, and today is, I believe, the last one. We've conducted 9 of these meetings throughout the Great Lakes states, and then also tonight. And so, again, trying to make sure that we involve people in developing the shared vision for the study. As we go through the timeline, we'll have study progress briefings. In other words, we will get together with the public and say, here's what we've been up to. We're working on those assessments that we mentioned, and here's what we come up with. And because we need input from the public to make sure we're getting these things right. In Q3 of 2025, we will have a basin-wide analysis results meeting. In other words, after we've done that analysis for the entire basin of the Great Lakes, we will share our results. We'll have 5 meetings that we'll be working with you all to share those with. And again, checking in with you to make sure that you approve and that you think we got it right. That's part of it. And then moving forward through 2026, we'll continue to work on those results. So that we can move towards draft recommendations. In 2026, we'll have 2 study progress briefings, and then we'll have the draft recommendations report that will come out. We will share those draft recommendations with you, and we want to get your input. And there will be an 8-week public review period that will allow you guys to review our work and to contribute and to help us to understand if we got it right, and critique, comment, and review. And so after that, as we move towards the final report in 2027 and 28, there'll be some more study progress briefings so we can kind of tell you, kind of build on everything as we go and keep you apprised of what's happening. And then again, October of 2028, we forecast the study to be completed. Now, I want to direct your attention to the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side. We talked a little bit about this. You can subscribe. We have a website, and you can go click on the QAR code, and you can subscribe to the study. And what that will do is that you will be on the list. We'll be able to email study updates and that sort of thing. Lots of documentation and materials that you'll be able to receive. And then we'll also announce on this timeline, you have all of these opportunities for engagement. We'll be notifying you with plenty of time to get it on your calendar of future public engagement. So I really stress that it's important, and I urge you to subscribe to our website so that you can be kept in the loop on all this stuff. And hope to see you there. Next slide, please. With that, I'd like to turn it back to Dr. Akilah Martin, and she's going to bring us into the shared vision portion of this meeting. Akilah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. That was a great study background. Thank you so much. So now I'd like to welcome Kara Patello, who is the co-lead planner from the Chicago district, to discuss the development of the shared vision statement. Welcome, Kara.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. So, yeah, like Mike had mentioned, kind of the main topic of the meeting that we're hosting today is that shared vision statement. And so we're really excited that you joined us this evening to give us some of your thoughts on what our shared vision statement should be. So our goal of building resiliency throughout the Great Lakes is really a collective effort, and it's going to require a lot of commitment and a lot of dedication over a long period of time to make this happen. And we're hoping to develop this shared vision statement to be our guiding principle as we move through the various stages of the study over the next 5 years. So this shared vision statement will help us stay on track, and it will keep everyone involved in the study aligned around this common purpose over the next 5 years and then hopefully beyond. So we want this shared vision statement not just to resonate with our study team or with just the Army Corps of Engineers or the state partners. We want this shared vision statement to resonate with everyone who cares about the Great Lakes. So we're really glad, like I said, to have you here with us this evening and are looking forward to any feedback that you might have on the shared vision statement that our team has drafted. So just a quick background on how we kind of got to these next 3 draft statements that I'm going to be sharing in just a second. But we started the process by having a brainstorming session internally with our team, with the resiliency study team, and that consists of the Army Corps of Engineers, so the 3 Great Lakes districts, as well as our 8 Great Lakes cost-sharing partners. And together we brainstormed what makes the Great Lakes important to those that live, work, and recreate along the coast of the Great Lakes. And we also extended this conversation to tribal nations during the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA's Midwest Region's Partners in Action Conference last fall. And through these brainstorming sessions and our conversations with tribal nations, we got some really great feedback, and you can see that here on the screen. So some of the things that came up several times were things like beaches, tourism, we have rich habitats, you know, the coastline and biodiversity, as well as being a culturally significant part of our identity and an irreplaceable part of the way of life for a lot of people and communities along the Great Lakes coast. And so our team started to think about this feedback, and you can see here in these blue boxes at the top of each column, these are some of the key themes that we kind of picked up on. So things like resources, recreational opportunities, the natural environment, and intrinsic and cultural value of the Great Lakes were some of the common themes that we saw kind of emerge through the feedback that we were seeing. And so the resiliency study team took this feedback, and we started to think about, you know, how we could incorporate this into a shared vision statement, and as we also started to think about what makes a strong vision statement. So we want this to be a really memorable, kind of like a catchy slogan, since it'll be guiding us over the next 5 years. We want it to be, you know, simple, memorable, and really clear interpretation. So our team took that feedback, and we started to come up with a couple of options just to get the conversation going, and I'm going to share those with you now. We have, like Mike said, we've been hosting a series of shared vision meetings. So this is our final of 12. We hosted 9 public meetings total. We had 2 shared visioning meetings with tribal nations, and then we also had a shared visioning meeting with our federal agents, our federal partner agencies as well. And so the resiliency study team is going to be taking all of this feedback and kind of, you know, sifting through it after we kind of move through these shared visioning process, and we're going to take this feedback and use it to refine our final shared vision statement. So these are the 3 draft statements that we would love to get your feedback on, and I will read them one by one. So our first is that our vision for the Great Lakes coast is to improve and protect their ecosystems, recreational opportunities, cultural significance, communities, and economies to be resilient for present and future generations. Our option number 2 is that our vision for the Great Lakes coast is to support, strengthen, and protect their natural resources, recreational opportunities, communities, economies, and quality of life for current and future generations. And our third draft statement is that our vision for the Great Lakes coast is to ensure a resilient and sustainable future for vibrant coastal communities, abundant natural and cultural resources, and thriving economic assets. So these are the 3 vision statements that we, again, drafted to kind of get the ball rolling and to start some conversations. But this vision needs to be a collective one, so we're really looking forward to hearing what thoughts you might have on these. And again, they might sound kind of similar because we used that same core set of initial input and brainstorming to develop these 3 options. And so we're going to take all this feedback from the shared visioning process, and we're going to take one of these statements and we're going to refine it and incorporate all of that feedback. So if there's something in one of these statements that really resonates you, we'd love to hear what it is about that one that you think is important, and we kind of carry over and include in that final shared vision statement. We would love to hear if these statements capture your vision for a resilient Great Lakes coast, and if they don't. So if there's something really important that we have not included here, we would love to hear that as well. And again, the resiliency study team is going to take this input back with us, and we're going to look it over as a team and incorporate it into that final shared vision statement, which will be shared on the study's website. So with that, I'm going to pause and give you a second to read through them a few times if you need to think about it. And again, share with us any thoughts you might have. So if there's something that you really love about one of them that you, again, think should be definitely included in that final shared vision statement, we'd love to hear that. And then if there's anything that you think could be improved across the three of these, we would love to hear that as well. And if you would prefer to submit your feedback on the statements a little bit more anonymously, again, you can either send myself a direct message or Dr. Martin or Madeline Dewey, our two facilitators, and they will share it aloud anonymously so we can all hear your thoughts. All right, so I see a comment in the chat that says, I like the third one, but there isn't a mention about justice in any of the current vision statements. Resiliency is also about environmental justice for all communities present and future. So thank you very much for sharing that comment with us. And then a second comment in the chat is that I feel number 2 is more encompassing to all demographics of people. Unfortunately, people cringe when they hear the word sustainable. No matter how factual the word is, I worry that it will instantly turn people away. Number 2 is clear and concise. Those are great comments. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Hi, Kara. I have one, if you don't mind. I prefer the third one. The term sustainable is key to a resilient future and should be included in the vision. Thank you so much for that response.
All right. I don't want to cut anyone off. If you're still typing something, please feel free to continue and feel free to put that comment in the chat. If you have any additional thoughts that come up as we talk about some of the study deliverables, again, we welcome you to put that in the chat and our team will take that feedback back with us and incorporate it into our full summary of the feedback that we're getting during these meetings. So if something comes to mind, feel free to either put it in the chat again or send it directly to one of us and we'll make note of it. But I don't see anything else coming through. And so I think we can go ahead and move on to our second part of the shared visioning exercise, which is this website that we have developed to allow you to share kind of your preference of those 3 statements. And so if you use this QR code here in the corner, you can navigate directly to the website where you can share your preference, or you can type this URL into your browser, and I think it's in the chat, but I'll also read it aloud, and that is GLCRS, and that's for Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, so glcrs.evs.anl.gov/shared vision. And when you get to this website, you will see a page that looks similar to this little image here, but it has those 3 draft statements that we just discussed, and there's a box next to each one. And so on this website, you will be able to tell us which of the 3 statements is your favorite by entering 1 for your top choice, and then entering 2 for your second choice, and 3 for your third choice. So we're asking that you please only submit 1 response just so that we can make sure everyone's voice is heard equally. But this shared visioning exercise webpage will be active for the duration of the 2.5 hours that this meeting has been scheduled for. So if you need more time to think about it, just please get that response in by the end of the 2.5 hours that this meeting has been scheduled. So I think that would bring us to 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And this is just a summary of all of the meetings that we've held. So as you can see here, we had a public meeting co-hosted with each of our 8 Great Lakes cost-sharing sponsors, as well as this after-hours meeting here that we're hosting right now. And so the team will be taking all of this feedback that we're gathering. So again, if there's anything that comes to mind, please feel free to put it in the chat. And our shared visioning exercise website will be live again for the rest of the meeting, but we thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this evening on our shared vision, and thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you so much, Kara, for that wonderful presentation, and thank you all for participating. Please continue to do so, as Kara stated earlier. And now I'd like to welcome our co-lead planner from the Chicago District, Jana Potoff, to discuss the major study task. Welcome, Jana.
Thanks so much, Dr. Martin. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So the next few slides, we are going to complete a flow chart of all the major study tasks that then inform our study recommendations. The Corps has recently completed 2 large-scale coastal watershed studies. The latest is called the South Atlantic Coastal Study. Some of the graphics that we're including in this flow chart are pulled from the South Atlantic study to give you an idea at what types of deliverables our study team will be producing to inform our study recommendations. So this is a resiliency study, but for us to become resilient, we first have to understand where are we vulnerable. And so we have been very fortunate that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, has funded modeling that is looking at a range of possible future climate scenarios and how those impact the expected range of Great Lakes water levels and ice conditions and waves. So this study team is a multi-agency team. The Corps, our Engineer Research and Development Center, NOAA, Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, USGS Woods Hole. We have the Chicago District, Buffalo District, and Detroit District, the 3 Great Lakes districts also participating in the study, Cornell University, and the University of Michigan. So in addition to the study team, we are hosting, as part of this GLRI funded effort, quarterly stakeholder updates. For those who subscribe to the website, you will get a notice when we begin to roll out the climate study results, and will be invited to participate in the hosting of those meetings where those results are discussed. So please subscribe. So once we have an understanding of what climate change, what the range of possible climate change conditions could do to Great Lakes water levels, we're going to take that information and then overlay the high water conditions with our coastal resources. And here is a graphic from the South Atlantic Coastal Study that shows an image from their GIS analysis. So what we'll be doing is this basin-wide big picture throughout the whole Great Lakes, the U.S. side, and with this GIS analysis, we are going to look at where coastal resources may be inundated, and also the low water extents of those climate scenarios. The product will be a very user-friendly technical product that will be available through the project website. Once again, here is an example of the South Atlantic Coastal Studies web platform. For those who subscribe to this website, you'll be notified once this information and geo platform is posted on our project website. So with that information, our GIS analysis, also the Corps of Engineers and our state partners, 8 Great Lakes state partners, recollection of impacts because of the recent low water conditions as well as the high water conditions, we'll be using that to select coastal resources to perform focused evaluations. Those focused evaluations are geared towards doing something much more site-specific, using available data sets in addition to the climate scenarios. They will be 2-day workshops where coastal managers and resource owners will participate in a workshop setting with the Corps of Engineers and state partners. We'll be conducting site-specific vulnerability assessments on these areas, and the goal of them would be to identify near-term and also long-term actions that could be conducted to improve resiliency. Throughout the basin, we'll be conducting 14 workshops, and up to 10 coastal resources will be discussed in each of those workshops. So with the output from our basin-wide analysis, and then also the results of these focused evaluations, that will inform the strategic recommendations, the big picture recommendations of how to improve resiliency in the Great Lakes coast. And so those ranges of actions are like next steps as far as studies go. So, a monitoring, a study for action and monitoring, and then also just a straight up study for action. And who could be involved? It's not only the Corps, not only our state partners, but all federal agencies and local governmental agencies and non-governmental agencies and tribal nations. So here is an example pulled from the South Atlantic Coastal Study of a range of recommendations that were included in their study. And you'll see that we noted in Aqua different, that there's different agencies that are identified as the ones that have authority and their mission areas align with that recommendation, as well as you'll see a little parentheses where we describe whether this is a near-term action, something that is going to be completed in the near future, or if this is a longer-term action that needs funding and additional studies. So we realize that we're only able to get to about a maximum of 140 resources along 5,000 plus more than 5,000 miles of shoreline. So we are going to be developing 2 products. The first one is the risk-based framework for resilient shoreline management. Buffalo has already completed this, developed this document, but we would be updating this document with this the climate sensitivity and the climate resiliency in mind. In addition to this document, our website will host a high-level overview of the different steps that coastal managers, property owners, tribal nations, and others should be aware of and consider when they're thinking about managing their coastal resources and also citing new coastal resources. So with these products, as well as the recommendations, we trust that this will be the part of our study that helps improve resiliency and helps to plan for resiliency in the Great Lakes Basin. Thanks so much. Back to you, Akila.
Thank you, Jana, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for going over the major study tasks. If you perhaps have any questions, please place your questions in the Q&A chat, Q&A functionality of Zoom. If you have any comments, please place those in the chat. And now I'd like to welcome back Kara Patello to discuss the basin-wide analysis. Welcome, Kara.
All right, thank you so much. So the last part of our presentation is we just want to share some of the work that we have already started on the study deliverables. And so looking back at this flowchart of our major tasks, we're kind of zooming in here on this first major study task, which is the basin-wide analysis. And the objective of the basin-wide analysis is we really want to understand that big picture view of how the changing lake levels due to climate change could possibly impact important coastal resources. So things like communities, coastal infrastructure, as well as coastal environments. And like Jana said earlier, the first step to resiliency is to really understand where there are important resources that could be at risk to the hazards under these different climate scenarios. And so this first step in our study is really important because it's going to help us identify the areas around the Great Lakes that we, so when I say we, the Army Corps of Engineers, other federal agencies, as well as tribal nations, our state partners, and local communities might want to take a closer look at the exposure for in a more detailed analysis to really understand, what's at risk and what the consequences are. So this is the first step in kind of identifying those areas that might warrant a further, more detailed analysis, and it's really the foundation of the rest of the study. So because we're taking a big picture look with the basin-wide analysis, we're really going to stick to data sets that cover the whole study area. So we're not going to be using any local or state-specific data sets at this point in the study, and this is really just to ensure that we're having a consistent analysis, a consistent view across the board of how these changing lake levels could affect coastal resources. So to identify those basin-wide data sets, the resiliency study team worked with engineers, planners, scientists, and cultural resource experts at the 3 Army Corps districts that are working on the study, so Buffalo, Chicago, and Detroit districts, to help identify what resources we thought were important to include in the study. And then we also worked really closely with our state partners on this. And this is great because each of the state partners brings their own unique perspectives and insights, and our state partners also do a really great job at kind of advocating for and recognizing what the folks in their states really care about. So together we were able to compile an inventory with over 100 different 100 different data layers for coastal resources. And then we took this inventory and we started to break it up into different categories. So you can see here the different categories or big buckets that we have of resources is social vulnerability and environmental burdens. That's going to make up our first index. We'll have environmental and historic resources as a second index. And then we also have population and infrastructure. And then our fourth index is going to be a combination of all of the resources in one index so that you can get that really big picture view of where all the resources are and how they could possibly be exposed to the hazards. So once we build out these indexes, we're going to combine them with the hazards. And so for this analysis and this study in specific, we're really looking at the high and low water levels under that range of possible climate scenarios. And again, this is going to be coming from that modeling effort that Jana had mentioned earlier. So to give you a little bit more detail about what we're including and what types of resources we're going to be including in the study, I'm going to break down these 3 indexes a little bit further. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the social vulnerability and environmental burdens index. And as we start to think about building resiliency along the coast, it's really important that we're recognizing that there are individuals and communities that are exposed to a higher level of environmental burdens or that may be socially vulnerable, and these individuals and communities may be disproportionately affected by hazards. So to incorporate this into our analysis, we're using a data source that's called the Environmental Justice Index, or the EJI. And this data source was developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. And as you can see here, the EJI includes 36 different indicators to identify areas that are considered to be highly burdened. And so their indicators look at things like you can see here in the green at the top, we have the environmental burden. So they have different indicators for things like air pollution, hazardous and toxic sites, water pollution. And then they also include factors for social vulnerability. So that's things like racial and ethnic minority status, socioeconomic status, housing type, housing characteristics. And then lastly, they include data for health vulnerability. So that's different data that accounts for chronic disease burden. And then this is all combined, again, to help us identify areas that could be considered highly burdened. And then in addition to that EJI data source, to respect tribal sovereignty and self-government and to fulfill federal trust and treaty responsibilities to tribal nations, the land within the boundaries of federally recognized tribes will be designated as being socially vulnerable in our index. And so for that, we're going to be using the U.S. Census Bureau's tribal census tracts to identify those areas in our analysis as well. And so the next index that we're going to be looking at is the environmental and historic resources that are located along the Great Lakes coast that could possibly be impacted. And so the first category that we have here is protected and managed areas. And this is things like national and state parks and lake shores, the National Register of Historic Places, We have important bird areas, conservation areas, critical habitat for threatened and endangered species. So we have GIS data layers that show us where these areas are located along the coast. And then in addition to that, we have GIS data layers that will show us where there are coastal habitat types that are important to include in the analysis as well. So we have things like wetlands, forests, beaches and dunes, rocky shoreline, fish spawning locations. So all of those locations will also be factored into our analysis. And then we have also been working with tribal nations on the inclusion of any additional data sources that they might have that they would like to share with us and they want us to include in the study to better represent the significance of tribal resources as best that we can. We also recognize that there are limitations to the type of analysis that we're doing. So we're doing a GIS analysis, and there might not be GIS data for many, many important resources, many resources that are important to the tribes. And so we acknowledge that there are limitations to the type of analysis that we're doing, but we're also working closely with the tribes and coordinating with them to incorporate any information or data, GIS data that they want to share with us to include in the study. And so that is our Environmental and Historic Resources Index. And then lastly is the population and infrastructure. So you can see here we have critical infrastructure, and you can see that we're using the Department of Homeland Security's critical infrastructure sectors to help us identify the different resources to include. So things like dams, we have energy, water treatment plants, transportation, so roads that are located along the Great Lakes coast. And then we're also including community resources. So parks, schools, important local economic assets, those will all be included there. And then again, we're coordinating with the tribal nations to make sure we're representing their infrastructure resources as accurately as possible. And then population is being factored in as well. So that is what makes up our population and infrastructure index. And we are still very, very early on in the study and definitely early in the basin-wide analysis as well. But we're planning to host a public meeting in the fall of 2024. And at that point, we'll be able to share more details about the basin-wide analysis. And so we hope that you can make that meeting. And our target for having those final results to share in that publicly accessible geoportal that Jana had kind of showed an image from the South Atlantic Coastal Study, we'll have something similar to that to share in the summer of 2025. And so we definitely hope that you continue to stay involved. And thanks again for being here today.
Thank you, Kara. That was wonderful. Thank you for going over all of the layers for the basin-wide analysis. As Madeline placed in the chat, if you do have questions, we have now arrived at the questions and comments session of the portion of this meeting. And so if you do have a question, we invite you and encourage you to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Click that. You can send us a private question if you don't want your name to be shown. You can also send a direct message to myself, Akila, and or Madeline Dewey in the chat if you'd like to remain private. So please ask questions. We're at the ready. We're excited to engage with you. All right, I see one question that I have. So thank you, Joshua. So it is, how do the EJI factors that you will be using differ from what EPA and NYSERDA are using? And Madeline, I know you know what NYSERDA, if you may want to put that in the chat so people will know what that is. Thank you so much. And welcome, Kara.
Sure. So yeah, thank you for that question. So we considered several different data sources when we were kind of selecting the EJI, and that the EJI was kind of what we came up with as best suited for our analysis, and that's for a couple reasons. So again, we were kind of using the criteria that the data source had to be basin-wide. So that I think is why we wouldn't be using that New York specific data set. And then in terms of other national kind of social vulnerability data sets, we thought the EJI was really strong for use in this analysis because it does have those other factors. So in addition to just social vulnerability, it has those environmental justice indicators included in it as well as health vulnerability indicators that are kind of based on this comprehensive literature review that the CDC did to select the indicators, as well as kind of the metrics that they're using to calculate those scores. And so, yeah, we considered several, and we found that that was the strongest one and the most compatible with the other data sources that we were going to be using. So thank you for your question.
Very nice. Thanks so much, Kara. Thank you, Madeline, for placing the meaning of New York CERTA in the chat. If any of you who've already placed questions and you feel like it was not answered to the best of what you were hoping for, you can please re-ask your question for clarity, and we can definitely answer it. So far, I'm not seeing any other questions. Madeline, over to you. Have you received any direct messages, or did I miss any questions in the chat?
Thanks, Akila. Yep. I am not seeing any direct messages to me right now, but I'll stay glued to my screen here in case any come through. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline. All right, so we have another one from Joshua. I'll read it slow. Since there are only a limited number of resources that can be more specifically analyzed, how will local versus state versus federal critical infrastructure be weighted? Specifically, I saw that defense bases were listed, and I'm wondering if they will receive the same importance as locations that support local life, for example, firefighting training or educational sites. That's an awesome question, Joshua. Thank you for asking that. And I welcome Kara to the stage to respond.
Sure. So I can talk a little bit about, how that consideration is going to play into our basin-wide analysis. So the goal that we're kind of striving for our basin-wide analysis is, transparently communicating as much information as possible so it can be used by as many people as possible. And so we're really just going to be focusing on showing where there are existing resources and how those kind of overlap with the different hazards that we're expecting to see under the different scenarios. And so our analysis is just going to be showing, like I said, kind of like simply where there are existing resources that are kind of overlapping with our hazards. And then I don't know, Jana, if you wanted to talk about how the Army Corps will be selecting those sites for the focused evaluations and how the states might consider selecting sites for the limited number of focus workshops.
So as far as the states go, each state has its own priorities, and so we don't know. Part of this part of this workshop, this meeting that we're hosting right now and getting the input on the shared vision, was to have the state have an opportunity to listen to those who are interested in our participating in the study. As far as the federal government, the Corps of Engineers, we have not determined how we are going to select sites because the analysis hasn't been completed yet. So that's to be determined. The lion's share of the sites, though, will go to the states that are partnering with us.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you, Kara, for that response. I'll pause for a second to see if there are any other questions that may come up. So I guess we can answer, I guess I should say, and pardon me for not saying this earlier, if you click on the Q&A, whether you have a question or not, you can see some of the responses that our team has already placed in the question and answer functionality of Zoom. And so just for purposes of stating out loud, Jana, if you could respond briefly, if you will, to who can attend these workshops that were just mentioned. And that was a while ago. I think that was during the major study background. I believe that was
Sure.
that question. Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
So the Corps of Engineers and our 8 Great Lakes sponsors will be co-hosting these will be co-hosting coastal resource managers and operators and those that have knowledge about the vulnerabilities of certain coastal resources under high and low water conditions. The public won't be invited to participate, But each workshop report will be documented and included in our report, our main report, and available on the website. In addition, if your community would like to partner with the Corps to perform one of these workshops, please, send us an email through our study website, and we will have a project manager reach out to you. And one thing to ensure that this was that I adequately, punched it. But as far as the recommendations are not going to be limited to the 140 coastal resources. So our basin-wide analysis, in addition to the coastal resources, in addition to the Corps' understanding, as well as our state agencies' understanding of the impacts that occurred during low water and high water just recently, all of that information will inform what is recommended in the study. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, Shauna. Thank you so much for that, for confirming and affirming who can participate and when. So far, I'm not seeing any more questions, so it sounds like you all did a fantastic job at presenting the context. So we really appreciate everyone for being here and all your input and all your questions. And so, Mike, I'll welcome you to the stage. No, not Mike, sorry. John Paggio, who's also from the Chicago district, to go over the next steps. And then we'll have Mike Padilla, our project manager, to make the final remarks. Thank you. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Akila. So when this study was being scoped out, we wanted to have a local community focus, and it is why we partnered with all of our state partners, and why we invited you all this evening to share your feedback on our shared vision statements. To maintain this local community focus, we put in study progress briefings over the next 5 years of the study. This is also the last of the 9 public shared vision meetings, but that is just the beginning of our public study engagements. Next year, we'll be presenting 5 basin-wide analysis results in 5 public meetings. And then in late summer 2027, we'll have draft recommendations followed by an 8-week public review period. And that'll also be a public meeting. So that is a lot to keep track of over a long period of time. So the best way to keep up with our study is to subscribe to our mailing list, where we will send regular study updates and website updates to our subscribers. We also have a study website that has more information about the study. And once we finalize the shared vision statement, we will post it on the website and alert subscribers of our mailing list. We will also alert subscribers when the modeling results are publicly available, and we look forward to seeing you all in our future public engagement meetings.
Thank you so much, John. Welcome, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, John and Akila. Hey, folks, we really appreciate your participation today. This concludes the presentation for today. Obviously, you have a lot of insight. The questions were great. The discussion was good. Once again, thank you very much. We really look forward to your participation, and please subscribe so that we can keep you up to date and get you back here for other presentations that we'll make and sharing other information about the study. But as I say, the presentation is over. And so feel free to sign off now, and the team will stick around for a few minutes just in case there's any last minute questions. But the presentation is over. Have a great evening, and God bless.
John and Kara, there is another question. I don't know if you wanted to go ahead and type an answer or respond to it live. if it's appropriate to respond to this particular question. Let me know. All right. Thank you, Jana. So I'll read it out loud. Thank you, Joshua. You've been great. Will the recommendations engage with the issue of competitive levee construction that encourages further grade construction further downstream? Welcome,
Mhm.
Jana.
So Joshua, a few things. The our modeling, if the downstream is in relationship to riverings, we have limited modeling regarding rivers. So I want to first make that clear. But if you're talking about shoreline hardening, which is that we had quite a few people bring that up. Part of our study, we're not going to be identifying specific actions, Joshua. Instead, we're going to be presenting future studies that will lead to actions, and because more analysis will need to be conducted on a site-specific basis. One of the things that we're going to be included in that risk-informed decision framework is a range of measures, because we want to raise awareness that there are natural and nature-based features that can help improve resiliency of shorelines. So that's the hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Jana, for that response. Joshua, if you have any other questions, you can definitely ask them now and or follow the email that Madeline placed in the chat earlier. Okay, thanks so much, Joshua.
Once again, thanks everybody for your participation. Great questions.